11. Shaka, we went through Brazil's roster yesterday. Obviously, Brazil, the better's favorite right now. Shouldn't that 11 be your better's favorite?
I think it very well can be. I still think there are question marks over Manuel Neuer, as you mentioned. Hadn't played since September. Ter Stegen, I think, has firmly established himself as one of the world's best. But in terms of squad and in terms of options for Jurgen Löw, it just doesn't get any better. And it speaks to how strong this squad is. That Götze does not even get in. This is a player who scored in the final 4 years ago for Germany to lift the World Cup, and yet still not even in this squad. It speaks to Jurgen Löw's, not only his talent pool, but the authority that he commands and is able to make these selections, because I don't think many managers would have that kind of luxury or that kind of presence.
Toni Kroos hasn't had the kind of season that Toni Kroos has had before. Huge admirer of the player. But Real Madrid have been up and down. I know they're going to the Champions League final, but that midfield hasn't operated as well. Gundogan's had his injury problems, and he's not always started when fit. Yet, according to Ralph Honigstein, our colleague, he could be in the starting 11. Sané on the wing, great season for Man City, but inexperienced at this level. Got a few caps, but nothing like the rest of the squad. So there are some areas that you could look at and say, why are they so far up again as favourites or second favourites behind Brazil? But I just think it's because the German mentality, when the chips are down, this coach and this squad of players in this nation have generally found a way to get the job done.
I think that's the thing. Time and time again, you speak about German players in this squad who maybe haven't had great seasons. You could probably say the same about Thomas Muller coming into the squad. Hasn't been great. You've got a Mario Gomez, 32 years old, in this squad, yet he brings something that the others don't. And that's the thing. No matter what, it seems no matter who Germany name, you know they're going to be there or thereabouts. Understandably near the top in terms of favourites. And I expect them to get to the final, yeah.
Let's bring in Paolo here. Yesterday we get Brazil's roster. Today we get Germany's provisional roster. They meet tomorrow. Who are you picking?
I like Germany. I think the one thing that maybe gets a little bit forgotten here as well is just how helpful it is for a national team manager. You think about the reduced time you have to prepare for these games, to have cores of players who know each other and who are used to playing together. Now, you could take that all the way back with the national team to the last World Cup. I mean, you're looking at a team that could easily start 6 or 7 guys who started in the last World Cup. But you've also just got club dynamics. So that back four could include easily 3 guys from Bayern Munich if you go with Boateng and Hummels and Kimmich. You've got guys in midfield who maybe aren't playing together now, but Kroos and Khedira know each other, and Ozil all used to play together at Real Madrid. I think those little dynamics, the fact that you've got players who are familiar with each other and who will slot together without having to be guided as much by a coach is really valuable.
Juventus still in love with Alvaro Morata. 27 goals in 2 seasons for Juventus, 2014, 2015. Paolo, how realistic is this? Could we see a move for Morata back to Juve?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. I think with Juventus, it'll always come down to whether the price is right. They've been extremely smart operators in the transfer market for a number of years now, and the thing they do is they don't overpay in general for players. I guess the one that they've really splashed out on was Gonzalo Higuain, but that's not what they're looking to do with Alvaro Morata. You're looking at a player and thinking, has he perhaps lost a little bit of his luster in a market sense from the last year that he's had? We know that we've had him here before. We know how he fits into our system. We know what he can contribute both in Serie A, and indeed he had some impressive Champions League performances at Juventus. I think it's a very realistic prospect if the price is right.
What about the Chelsea perspective here, Craig? It was a club record signing. He had a maybe disappointing season, but Chelsea had a disappointing season. Is it too soon to cut ties?
No. They will, and this owner will make decisions that on a whim. Fire a manager, fire a coach, get rid of players, bring players back. I mean, the money's not... The one thing I would say, a lot of it now at Chelsea is more driven by the balance sheet than it was certainly 5 or 6 years ago and beyond that. They have certainly cut back. They've got some other priorities now, which is not going to be good hearing for Chelsea fans, or indeed the next manager coming in, whoever that may be. When Conte does go, the budget to spend is not going to be there. So it will be driven by finances as well as performance. I would be disappointed to see Morata go, because I think he's a better player than he certainly is a better player than we saw this season for Chelsea. I think his confidence was affected greatly. And I think if he does go, the mud that would be thrown at him was, well, couldn't hack it in the Premier League. And that, I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that's what would be thrown at him. And I think he's a better player than that. I think he's got all the attributes to do well in England. He's big, he's strong, he's physical, he's quick. For whatever reason, for Alvaro Morata, it just didn't happen for him this year.
There are a couple of things at play here. Let's remember, we're still not quite sure who the Chelsea manager is going to be next season and whether Morata fits into his plans and whether that manager will be able to bring the best out of Alvaro Morata. At the same time, it's a bit soon to talk about cutting your ties with Morata, because if Chelsea had to learn one lesson of 12 months ago, is you don't cut ties with your striker until you've got a replacement already lined up. I think they pay the price for that. Surely they don't make that mistake 2 years running.
Paolo, do you think that Morata can succeed at Chelsea if he is given some extra time?
I think he's a quality player. I think he's got, exactly as just been said, all the attributes that you're looking for in a striker. I think he has that real capacity to stretch a game. I think he's a player who particularly suits playing a sort of counter-attacking style. I think he's got an elasticity to his game that's just really compelling. But he does seem to be a confidence player, and I think that that's the one thing that you look at and maybe would get frustrated about with him, is that when he's not in a run of scoring, sometimes it feels like he can really lose. He can really lose himself, and he can maybe get a little bit too lost in his own head. I don't know, but he does seem to come up and down in waves, and perhaps that's something where if you're looking at him and saying, can he be my regular number 9? Can he be the guy who I'm relying on as my chief goal scorer? Is more of a problem. But if you're looking at him as a complementary forward, as you're looking at someone who can play in a two-man attack or just sort of not be the one who you're relying on all of the time for goals, I think he's got a fantastic...
When I was at Sassuolo, there's no doubt that Mario is a player of great quality. Great quality, yes, at times great headache as well. Paolo, what do we think? Is this the beginning of a return to prime time for Mario Balotelli?
I think never say never, but also don't read too much into this just yet. Eusebio Di Francesco was asked a direct question about Mario Balotelli, and he gave a very honest answer, which I think is admirable. I think there's a few things to consider here. First of all, Sassuolo are not Roma, so when he's saying he thought about getting him at Sassuolo, he's talking about a club which has a slightly lower level of what it's aiming for as a club. I think it's also true that he was there for a number of years, during which Balotelli's career went through some peaks and troughs. But he has gone to Nice and scored goals. He is looking for a move back to a slightly bigger environment. And Roma potentially is the sort of place where you could see where he might fit. They were very reliant on Edin Dzeko this season for goals. Now, they do have a direct alternative to Edin Dzeko, who they already signed for a good amount of money last summer, in Patrick Schick, who took a long time to come good this season, struggled with injury, but also just with form and adapting to that environment. And I don't get the impression they're necessarily ready to chuck him out yet. If you don't do that, where does Balotelli fit in this team? You're talking about a team that's played with one real centre forward, and is it going to keep doing that? Because Di Francesco speaks very openly about the fact that he thinks that 4-3-3 is the perfect formation. So I think there's a lot of ifs and buts here, but Balotelli's star is clearly on the up right now.
Shaka, if you're a bigger club, is Balotelli worth the risk?
Not yet. I remain...
What more would he have to do?
I still feel another season at Nice. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Balotelli fan. And I think players of that kind of quality don't come along that often. But he's struggled to handle the limelight, albeit he was much younger and, by his own admission, wasn't mature enough to handle some of the pressure that came with playing for the big clubs that he's represented so far. But still, kind of given those headaches, I just want to see another solid year. And as good as his numbers look for Nice, what was it, back end of 2 seasons ago, his teammates stopped talking to him and there was speculation that he was out the door. Balotelli comes with a lot of baggage, and I just want to make sure he's fully offloaded that baggage before taking a big money gamble on him again.
I was broadcasting in England when he was a youngster at Manchester City. And he's a huge talent, of course. Looked as if he could be a great player going forward. Slightly cuckoo with the things he would do.
Coming from you.
Or a lot cuckoo. But then you give him time, you say, okay, youngster, give him time. Don't want to be overcritical. As I sit here now, if I was a top club around Europe, I wouldn't have him anywhere near the place.
Really?
Would not have him anywhere near the place.
Why?
Because he's a bad egg. Talent, too much trouble, too much hassle, too much potential falling out with managers, too much potential trouble in the dressing room, and not exactly Messi-esque or Ronaldo-esque return in goals. Now, 5 or 6 years ago, I wouldn't have said that, but I'm sorry, we are 5 or 6 years down the line. He's not a youngster anymore. He's an experienced player, and I wouldn't have him anywhere near the place. Ask Liverpool, who took the gamble.
Paolo, you got a rebuttal here to defend your fellow Italian?
I disagree personally with the specific terming of him as a bad egg. I don't think he's a bad egg, but I do think he's hard to manage. That's where I agree with Craig. And I think the problem with Mario is that whenever you have him places, the story tends to become all about Mario, which is difficult when you're trying to operate a team, when you're trying to make things work for everybody. And I think an example I could give that's just literally just happened is Roberto Mancini is coming in as the Italian national team manager, and he also has opened the door to maybe getting Balotelli involved. He said that I'm going to look at him. And immediately after that press conference, Balotelli has already changed his Instagram page to say Italy striker, and suddenly all the press are picking up on the fact that he's done that. He hasn't played for Italy, he's just sort of been said by the manager that he might call him up. I think that's always the problem with Balotelli. It's always about Balotelli, and I think if you're trying to succeed at the highest level, it's hard to have someone like that unless they really are a Leo Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo.
Here's the difference, Paolo, on this, is that the major clubs around Europe can go and sign players of any nationality. So they got the choice. The reason Mancini's potentially bringing him back in the fold is because, let's be frank, by Italian standards, they're just not very good at the moment. So they can't afford to be jettisoning all the players. But when you talk about the top clubs around the big European leagues, they can cherry pick better players and better characters than Mario Balotelli.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your sort of fundamental point there, which is that I don't think he's good enough right now to walk into a club like Roma and expect to be the guy. And I think that's fundamentally the problem for me. I think Mario Balotelli's talent level is easily good enough to be playing for one of those clubs, but what he brings is a need to be the guy, to be the centre of attention, and he's not good enough to justify that at a club like Roma for me. But of course, Di Francesco is a very successful foot manager, and if he does go that way, then he obviously has his own.
Of course, in Group C, along with France, Peru, Australia. Peru, devastating news. Paulo Guerrero, his controversial drug ban held up, so he will miss the World Cup. There you see the odds according to 538. Paolo, what do we think about Denmark? A pretty solid bet to get out of the group?
I think it's most likely between them and Peru for the second spot. Obviously, with France, the clear favourites to go through. They're an interesting team. They've got a lot of physicality, a lot of very physically, literally just tall, strong players, but then you've got Christian Eriksen, who's a genuinely world-class player, I guess, that elevates them in terms of technical quality. I think they can otherwise be sort of quite direct in one note, but having a player like that allows you to play in a different way, and he's having an absolutely fabulous season, so obviously a lot on him, but he's not a one-man team either. Strong at the back. Simon Kjær, an excellent defender. Andreas Christensen coming on at Chelsea, so I mean, they're a good team. They're not one of the contenders, but I think they can get through this group.
Workmanlike. Having played with a lot of Scandinavian players over the years, with the Swedes and the Norwegians and the Danes, big and strong, physical, but always got a little splattering of talented players. Think back for the Danish to the Laudrup brothers. There has been others. For Sweden, it was Ibrahimovic and Henrik Larsson for a long time. They have got Eriksen, as Paolo mentioned, who is an excellent player. We saw them against, for those that watched the playoff against Ireland, just in Dublin, they completely blew them away. And he is the key man for them. So, I mean, I think they're 12th in the FIFA World Rankings at the moment. I mean, how the hell they've got up there, I don't know. But Peru are 11th. So that game's going to blow the roof off when that comes along. Mark my words.
Shaka, if as Paolo suggests, it comes down to Denmark and Peru, who are you taking?
I think Denmark gets out of the group. And a couple of things go Denmark's way here for me. One, Denmark clearly prefer to play against teams who come out and attack. You'll expect that from Peru. You saw that in the playoff against the Republic of Ireland. And then the spine of that Danish team, Christensen, Eriksen, you got Schmeichel in goal as well. And then finally, Denmark play France last in the group stages. And I feel you want to play the favourites last. When they've already qualified and maybe just a point will do them. I think that could come back to haunt Peru. And Denmark go through.
Are we ruling the Aussies out here in this group? I know we're not talking about Australia today, but we do go out occasionally in Australia.
Yeah.
And they're not the best, but you know they're going to be in the mix.
I think they'll be in the mix. But I just don't see them getting out.
Anybody that comes out the South American qualifying, I think, is always going to be a tough nut to crack. And Peru did, and I think that's why they're going to be a difficult team to beat for second place.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting group for sure. Catch us every day on the
I can
podcast.
see you're taken by that group.
I mean, you disrespected the South American team. That's no surprise.
How did I?
Well, I mean, you're all picking Denmark.
No, I didn't. You're not listening again. You're off in your Wayne Rooney.
That's not disrespecting the South
What did
American
I just
team.
say?
You've been on vacation
I
for
tell
half
you
the
what,
show.
you have got the dirtiest ears I've ever heard. You're blaming me picking on the South Americans when I've just sat here and said any team that comes out of South America is going to be a tough nut to crack. Now, listen and learn.
You know what? It's amazing. You actually got the FIFA ranking of Denmark spot on.
Yeah, Peru 11.
Yeah. It's like you looked it up or something.
Understand, any team that comes out of South American qualifying is going to be difficult to beat. That's not racist against South American teams.
You have to go.
God's sake,
you have
man.
to watch Extra Time to hear about those accusations.
You've got an agenda.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take 3 weeks off?
No, I don't.
I'm going to go and see the boss after this.
Paolo, hell.
Fulham, a slight favourite over Villa. There you see the numbers from the odds makers as well. Craig, we're going to miss you here on the show for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be tough dealing without, seeing you guys.
You want to give us a prediction?
Why don't I believe
Well, I'd go
that?
with the SPI, but not for any reason, and somebody's actually pressed the right buttons this week, it seems, for once. Fulham, the slicker of the two teams, obviously former European Cup winners Aston Villa, bigger club, having their problems at the moment. They've got an experienced team, lots of old Premier League players in there, but having seen both sides this season, I think Fulham play the better football, they play the pacier football, they finish further up the league over the course of the season, finishing third, so I'm going to go for Fulham to narrowly win.
You with Craig?
No, I'm not. I'm going to disagree slightly here. And as much as, well, certainly the odds don't favour the team that finishes third, I just feel on the one big occasion, and because this is a one-off at Wembley, the experience tells. As good as Fulham have been, as good as young Ryan Sessegnon has been, I think this is the moment where the experience that Aston Villa have, both in Steve Bruce and the likes of John Terry, come through.
Reports out of England that Jack Wilshere and Joe Hart will both not be on England's squad for the upcoming World Cup. I guess I'm supposed to be surprised?
No.
I don't really feel surprised.
It's hardly Paul Gascoigne not going to the World Cup in France when Glenn Hoddle told Paul in the hotel, and Ray Parlour never made it either, and Gascoigne was a star and took it badly. It's hardly that. Joe Hart's been out of form for a while. He's been out of the team. Hasn't played well, didn't play well at the Euros, has taken a real drop in confidence, was a very good goalkeeper at one point, Shaka would know better than me, but hasn't played well. And as for Jack Wilshere, I thought he just needed to get away from Arsenal a long time ago, and I don't mean on loan to Bournemouth, where by the way, he didn't get a game on a regular basis. So I don't think there'll be any tears shed. There might be one or two upset about it, but Gareth Southgate, if this is the squad and they're not in it, I think is absolutely correct.
I think Jack Wilshere continues to be an incredible talent, but his problems are of his own making. And if he's out of the squad, he's only got himself to blame and himself to look at. I am a little bit surprised that Joe Hart has been left out, not because he's been playing that well, but because you have three young, inexperienced at this level goalkeepers, and you pick two and maybe have somebody with experience, at least to be that kind of level head in the dressing room, someone that those two can go to. But
Well, they've got coaches for that, Shaq.
I
I take Joe Hart sitting his backside for what?
Saying
They ain't gonna play.
you're going to take somebody to sit on their backside.
Yeah, we'll take a youngster that
that's
can
the
learn
issue.
from it and go forward. All this taking all the old stooges all the time to do the same job and get knocked out. What was it? The last World Cup, they were bottom of the group in Brazil.
Granted, but I'm not sure what you learn by sitting on your backside. I mean, it's a great experience, but I'm not sure what you take away, especially if...
Well, you take the experience away, you take the training away.
You take those three goalkeepers in Pope, Pickford and Butland. Pickford and Butland have conceded more goals than almost anybody else in the Premier League. Pope is in fantastic form, has kind of come in late. And as a result, Southgate has a decision to make, and there's only that uncertainty. I think that Joe Hart isn't there. Otherwise, I go with experience at least for a voice in the dressing
The
room.
only decision that Gareth Southgate has to make is because the English media, not them all, and I'm not tiring everybody here, but people are saying, are you taking Joe Hart? Are you taking Joe Hart almost every week? Nobody's batting an eyelid. Nobody cares. I mean, Joe Hart will care about it, and friends and family. But if he looks deep and long enough, he knows he's not been good enough to go to a World Cup. And what's the point if you want to move forward? Southgate's a young manager. They want to make the England team younger. They're not going to win the World Cup. Let's not kid ourselves about that. But they might be more competitive. That means they might be more competitive at the Euros. So start blooding some of these younger players rather than taking the same old retreads.
Paulo, I wonder if you agree with Shaka. Is Joe Hart the bigger surprise omission of these two?
I have a hard time being stunned by either of these, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, Joe has been on a downward curve for a while now. I was really, at the time, I admired his decision to go to Torino. I thought it was brave. I thought he was trying to do something with his career that was stepping outside the box. But the fact is he didn't perform well in Italy and he hasn't performed well at West Ham. So you've only got 23 spots in that squad, and I don't think he's earned one. And likewise, Wilshere has not really been involved for a while. I guess Hart is the bigger surprise of the two in that he's been more involved than Wilshere in recent times, but I'm not surprised by either of these.
I mean, I'm not either. But if Jack Wilshere's not making this squad, and that's the way it seems, he's got to have a damn good look at himself, because this England midfield is pretty threadbare at the moment. This isn't exactly Hoddle and Wilkins. It isn't exactly Gerrard and Lampard and Carrick, and there's loads of players that I've missed out here over the piece. This is a pretty average England midfield by their standards historically, and yet Jack Wilshere, as talented as he is, as Shaka mentioned, isn't going to make it. I think that tells a story.
We'll await the final list of 23, but for now it looks like no Wilshere, no Hart for England. The end of the Premier League season means Mark Ogden's year-end awards. Let's dive right in, shall we? One very interesting thing I thought. Manager of the season, pretty obvious choice, right?
Pep?
No. Sean Dyche, Burnley, gets him to Europe. Kind of makes sense.
It makes sense when you see Mark Ogden's explanation in particular. He gives City Team of the Year for obvious reasons, and as a result gives Dyche Manager of the Year. By his explanation, I agree with that, even though I have to admit, when I first saw the list, I did raise my eyebrows.
He's done the most with the least, at least if you go by dollars, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he has done a lot. It's just unfashionable to say Manager of the Year is Sean Dyche, and some people won't like it, but I haven't got an issue with it.
But then you have two totally contrasting teams in certainly the way they play in City and Burnley. But at the same time, you've got to give Dyche credit for what he's managed to do.
Well, let's see Pep try to get Burnley to play like Man City.
Oh. You think Pep gets Burnley into Europa League?
No.
No,
I don't.
Biggest flop. This one I also thought was a surprise. Mark's got Fernando Llorente and his $12 million move from Swansea to Spurs. I would have thought Morata was the biggest flop.
No, I don't. Llorente certainly was a bigger flop than Morata in my mind. In that, at least Morata got a few goals, Llorente got one. But he also listed there Renato Sanchez at Swansea. I thought that was a bigger flop than Llorente. Llorente was never going to get a decent run in the team just because of Harry Kane. So you could kind of understand maybe his stop-start season. I expected so much more Renato Sanchez. And to see the way he played and how Swansea ended up, he was a bigger flop for me.
He made the wrong move at the wrong time to the wrong club, clearly. Knew Paul Clement from the Bayern Munich days. Ancelotti helped him out, went in there. Swansea were rotten. He was rotten. It was just one of those things where a young man found himself in the wrong place and couldn't handle it, and he did not have a good season.
Paulo, what do you think? Who's your biggest flop of the Premier League season?
Yeah, I mean, my mind went straight to Sanchez as soon as the category came up, and I think it's a little bit self-inflicted as well. I mean, as your team is getting relegated from the Premier League, to appear smiling and advertising a new emoji with your face on it perhaps isn't indicative of the kind of mentality people want to see from a player who is supposed to be the one dragging their team to safety.
Which category are you guys more interested in next? Best business or biggest turnoff?
Well, best business as in best business in the transfer market?
Yeah.
Or biggest turn-off? Go on, you pick, I don't know.
Biggest turnoff, Jose Mourinho's moaning. I think that's pretty good pick.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's constant. This year, anyway.
It is. And as much as last season Manchester United did win silverware, so you had to kind of temper criticism of Jose Mourinho with that. This time they didn't. And he seemed to kind of double down, and not just double down on the mourning, but throwing players under the bus, which is never a good look in my opinion.
Biggest turn-off for me would be, if we're talking Premier League, and that's obviously it's Mark's Premier League list, would be that some of these games in the lower half of the Premier League are going to have to shape up, as a product. We know some of the teams at the top are great to watch. But as good a job as Sean Dyche did getting Burnley in there, I think that tells part of the story. And then when you see some of the fixtures and some of the quality of those fixtures in teams maybe 7th, 8th downwards, that's a big turn off to me. And I think that's a big problem for the Premier League going forward.
Is it going to get better? The money's there.
Well, the money's there, and that's why I think it needs to be better. And I think some of the football we saw from some of the teams was pretty shocking. Understandable if you think about, in some sense, when you think about what's at stake if they get relegated. But that's been a problem that's been created by the vast amounts of money in the Premier League, and to some extent it's distorting the product almost 75% of the way down.
Paulo, you're a lot closer to it than we are. What do you think about Jose Mourinho's constant moaning this season?
Yeah, you know, I almost sort of am at the point with Mourinho and his comments where I sort of think people who engage with him surprise me, because this is what he does. This is what he's been doing for years. It's part a deliberate tactic, right, to distract us from whatever he doesn't want us to be talking about. Better that we're talking about what he's complaining about than the thing that he's done wrong or what's actually not working with his football team. But it's certainly not a compelling spectacle to me to see him grumbling on, no.
Right, well, when we talk about Mourinho a lot in this show, Paulo, trust me, it's not us. We don't come to work and say, right, we want to talk about Mourinho today. As producers, we walk in and say, no, I'm not talking about him again because it's the same old. But he is, and it is a big, I mean, it is grating.
Yeah.
And I don't think Man United fans want to hear it anymore as well. There's an FA Cup final coming up. They're going to spend in the summer. Let's have it toe-to-toe with City and Liverpool and whoever it is, and let's see who's the best. But let's cut all these excuses.
You almost have no choice to talk about Jose Mourinho. One, because he kind of commands that attention, as Paulo is pointing out. He's also Manchester United manager. Sure. And that commands a certain amount of notoriety, without question. Where I disagree slightly with Paulo here is, I feel the rhetoric has changed from his time at Chelsea. Yes, he always kind of spoke and took the limelight onto himself, I think, to distract away from his team as much as anything, or certainly the players. But now you see more and more he's throwing players under the bus, which is new and I find doubly distasteful.
Right, any more awards or what?
Yeah, I want to get Paulo's thoughts on the other point you made.
Carry on.
What about the dour state of play at the bottom and sometimes middle of the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is unfortunately something that we're seeing more and more across leagues. I don't think it's universal. I don't think it's entirely consistent across leagues, but across certainly the biggest leagues in Europe this season, you could say there was a real lack of title races. The fact that Napoli pushed as long as they did with Juventus gave one in Italy for a while, but even that disappeared before the end. We didn't get one in England, really, one that went to anything like the end of the season anyway. We didn't get one in Germany. We didn't get one in France. And in all of those countries, there's this sort of ever widening disparity between the haves and the have-nots, and it's something that European football in the sort of great scheme hasn't really got to grips with. And sure, we can all point at the Leicester story and say what a wonderful story it was, and it was. But the idea that that's sort of in any way systemically baked in is false. It's sort of groundless optimism. It's something incredible that happened once. It's not something that is going to keep recurring, because this is the modern game. This is how money works and how it influences the transfer activity of clubs. And where it ends, I don't know. I know there's a lot of talk again beginning to bubble up of the need for a European league to take those clubs that are the haves out and allow the rest to play on a more level playing field. But it's not exclusive to England, I don't think, that we have this sort of widening disparity between the teams at the top and the teams at the bottom, and the teams lower down, understandably, I guess, because they're all businesses doing the grim thing of clinging on however they can.
Yeah. But what I would say, and Paulo's right, it's not just a Premier League thing, but the one argument I would put to say it should be better is that, and I stand corrected here, but the French league, the Italian league, and maybe even the Spanish league, although their TV contracts have changed recently, is that the money that a lot of these Premier League clubs are getting is way more than teams in the bottom half in Italy, way more than Spain, way more than France, and I think way more than Germany. And that is where I think we should see better. You know, if the Stoke Cities of this world and we saw them be relegated, or the West Bromwich Albions, or, you know, the Southamptons, the Evertons even, if they're getting hundreds of millions from TV and beyond every year, I think we need to expect a little bit better on the field as a product.
Yeah, fewer excuses, at least financially, at the bottom of the Premier League. There you have it, Mark Ogden's year-end awards. You want the full list? You'll find it right here, ESPNFC.com.
Figures halfway out the door, trust me.
I tell you what, when I go back to the UK just for a couple of weeks, I know some of you want it to be a little longer, but give it time.
They're having
They're
having a little chip in right now.
Happening yet.
They're all chipping in to pay for a flight and hotel.
I know. So I'll stay if you want. Just say the word. What I want here when I go back to my hotel, when I go back to England, is my mates going like that to their wives on the phone. I love you.
Are you?
Who was doing that?
I love you. I love you. I love you.
I'm married like a week ago, man. I can't still say it.
I heard them in the green room upstairs. Okay, the hotel's terrible. It's really bad. They put me in these terrible hotels, not a bar, a television just, nowhere to walk, but I won't go out. No, I won't go out. I promise I won't go out.
There's no
I won't get in a taxi and go out because I love you.
I can't sleep.
No, wait.
I can't sleep if you're not next to me.
The best,
Salazar.
the best part of it all is that's not how I tried so desperately to hide it from Craig. He's the only other person in the room, and I literally did this. I was like, yeah, no, sounds good. I can't wait to see you. Love you too.
Serves you right.
And he's still.
Serves you right.
You got a lot to. Have you only come to my learning school of how to be outside the busiest bar on a high street with sirens and ambulances going past and still managing to convince your wife you're in the hotel room watching the TV. It's a skill that, you know.
Come to Burley's marriage counselling. Whenever you're ready.
Is that an ambulance I've just heard go by on the high street? No, it is not. That's the television. Watching a programme. It's a paramedic programme.
So that is, just to be clear, that
Seems
is
to be a lot of
Burley's.
people in the room there.
Burley's marriage advice is to lie.
Well, I mean, I think you'll find it stood a lot of people in very good stead.
Okay.
Artistic license.
I mean, if you're telling your missus the truth already, and you're nuts.
Wait. If you're telling your missus the truth already.
Well, he's been married a week.
When did you start? All right.
I don't know.
All right, let's.
It's been a while.
Let's get to the questions because we got some good ones today.
I hope so.
Bala wants to know the Premiership in totality this season. What should we expect next season? Shaka?
It's a bit deep for me, that.
Premiership in totality this season.
Oh, yes.
What does that mean?
That means-
What's the first part of the question mean?
What that means is that taking the Premier League, not the Premiership, the Premier League as a whole.
Right.
Taking it as a whole, what should we see next year compared to what we've seen this year? I'm surprised I was explaining that to you.
Yeah, you were the Twitter translator.
It still don't make a whole lot of sense.
The Premier League in its totality. So the Premier League
Right.
and its whole this year as a package, what should we expect next year in comparison?
More the same. What's changing? Not a whole lot's changing.
Why didn't you just say that the first time?
Well, I was trying to figure it out.
I figured it for you, lad. You're on the IFAB panel.
Next up, a question from Mode. This one a little bit more direct. Why is the Arsenal board not looking at Maurizio Sarri to replace Wenger? His team plays beautiful football, and he may well be leaving Napoli. Seems a no-brainer to me. Paolo, we'll bring you in on this one. Sarri a better fit at Arsenal or at Chelsea, where he's been more maybe realistically linked?
I don't know personally if he's a great fit for the Premier League, but as a manager, I think he probably would be someone who you'd expect to go into Chelsea, could just bring the mechanisms they need. I think Arsenal needs someone perhaps with a bit more of a vision for an overhaul, because they are a club that, you know, they finished sixth this season. They are a long way off where they want to be. I don't know. I'd love to see Arsenal go down the route going for someone like Leonardo Jardim, someone who's proved themselves every single step of the way, having taken a further step up that ladder and always advanced the teams they've moved on to. But I don't honestly know that I see Sarri at either Arsenal or Chelsea. I certainly don't see him at Arsenal.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, that's the point of the segment.
Paolo wearing a wig?
No.
Come on.
It looks wiggy.
He's wearing a helmet.
Yeah, pull it off.
I don't know where Paolo
Sorry,
got
guys.
windswept here. I'm just saying.
It's a windy day in
It's a
London.
beautiful thing, Paolo.
Arsenal are going to go for somebody younger, aren't they?
You notice how Burley didn't go after the hair.
I'm taking the opportunity while I still can.
Hey, hold on a minute.
Oh, we don't like it when the tables are turned, do we?
Oh, no. Listen, this is a daily occurrence for me. I think you'll find my hair is still very much growing. It's just not as much as it once was. And in different places.
Dylan's got a question about Manchester
You can
United.
do something about that, you know.
Yeah, they're products nowadays.
Well, and places. And it used to be very expensive. I mean, I don't know these. I really don't know, but I have read.
Apparently you know a whole lot more than you let on.
My good buddy Wayne Rooney might be able to.
Well, he's a lot younger than me, and he's had it done a couple of times, and he was a lot. He didn't have my thickness of hair. But you can. I mean, you can. So maybe one day when it gets really bad, my boss says to me, maybe when they put me in that seat over there, and they try and cut the wide shot up, but we'll see the back of the head. No.
Yeah. Dylan, big Manchester United fan, would Alderweireld and Willian turn United into title challengers?
I think it gets them closer to City, certainly, but as we sit right now, I still think City are favourites. But yeah, those two players, I think, answer United without question.
Yeah, sign those two, absolutely.
Yeah.
Willian's pace and... he spent a long part of the season coming off the bench, and then he got game time. He looked great, as you'd expect. So direct, and Alderweireld obviously has been excellent alongside Vertonghen until the injuries and the contract talks really thwarted that. Davinson Sanchez did quite well for them. But yeah, absolutely the kind of players that I think they will go for. Whether or not they'll get them, I don't know.
Paulo, you like those couple suggestions for Manchester United?
I definitely got Alderweireld, obviously absolutely sensational defender. I don't know that it's not going to take a more philosophical shift to keep up with this Man City team. They're trying to play football in a different way, and they're succeeding, and they're just thriving by being more aggressive, by scoring more goals, by taking a different approach to the game. And I think perhaps you need a different philosophy to keep up with that. I don't know that what Mourinho's doing on a real core level is enough to sustain a challenge against what City are doing right now.
That us?
Final question.
One more, you're nearly there.
Vacation is this
You're
close.
nearly there.
I'll read it fast. Would it be silly of Zidane to not start Bale in the Champions League final, considering his recent form?
No, because personally, I'm a huge admirer, but I think Zidane has got other pieces of the jigsaw that he likes. If he wants to play Benzema, and we don't know if he does, but if he does want to play Benzema and Ronaldo through the middle, he's probably going to be Isco playing on one side and either Modric or Kroos, probably Modric on the other. That's the way he's gone. Now, if Benzema doesn't start and he plays Ronaldo on his lonesome through the middle, there's an extra space in there. And that's still no guarantee, though, that that's going to be Gareth Bale that comes in, because Asensio might come in, or Lucas Vazquez might come in. Does his recent form help? Absolutely it does, and he is a quality player, and he is a confidence player, but I think Zidane has shown already, particularly this season, that he's prepared to go into some of the big games without him.
I think the best Bale can hope for is to come off the bench and have an impact, and what a player to have to do that. But I don't see Bale starting.
You back tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll be here.
You back tomorrow?
Somebody has to be.
I'll be here.
Early night tonight?
Early night.
Yeah.
Here he goes up. Early night tonight, Mrs. Salazar. I'll be in bed by 7:30, I promise you. I love you. No, you put the phone down. No, you put the phone down.
When does your freaking vacation
You
start?
put the phone down.
No, I love you more.
Here, playing?
I love you more.
I love you
No,
more.
I love you more.
No,
I love you more. Oh, for God's sake, man. Sort yourself out.
He won't be here. He will be in Lyon.
I love you lots.
Europa League final. With all the analysis.
You started telling your missus
You're
the truth.
blushing.
Well, I'm going to miss you, brother.
Oh,
I'm
that's
going to
great.
miss you.
I'm going to miss you.
Call in from your holiday
I'll call
for
in.
extra time.
I call in.
Send a tweet in.
Can you put me on
#MC extra time.
put me on a conference call with you and the wife? I want to hear the conversation.
I will. Maybe you can show me how to.
I'll guide you.
You're going to be in my ear.
I'll guide you.
All right. Well,
Get the hell off. Get us off, man. Come on.
extra time is over.
All right, Craig, you're off.